a Jack Bounds podcast.
Super glad to have you here. Super glad to have you as one of my guests because you're more than a friend, you're family, and you're also doing big things that are going to be really entertaining and also very informative that I think that we can talk about on this podcast. So this is a great opportunity for me, and it's also just going to be fun because it's you.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm having to be formal, and that's kind of the whole point of this podcast is to not be too formal. There's a lot of formal podcasts out there, and I just don't, I want us to just have the conversations we've had for years.
Exactly.
So how you been, man?
Man, it's been good. We ended school, when was that? Mid-June or so. So we've kind of been just hanging out since then, working out a little bit in the mornings and then kind of taking it easy in the afternoons. It's been cool. It hasn't been super busy. My weekends are usually quite busy with playing in church or whatever. But since we switched these online services, we've been going in and recording on a Sunday morning, but then recording more than one service. So we have a little extra bank of stuff. And now that it's July, so we've recorded all of our stuff up through July. So we kind of got a break from going in and recording now. So now it's super duper super chill. So I've been good, man.
Yeah.
Just hanging out, trying to
Awesome.
Trying to take it easy, but also stay kind of busy. Yeah.
Yeah. So you gotta just to fill everyone in. Let me pin your video so I'm looking at you. Just to fill everyone in, tell people where it is you teach and the church you play at and all of the other things that would be in your bio. I mean, it's a lot, obviously, but give the audience a brief rundown.
Awesome. Dope. All right. Well, I'm Vinson McMurtery. That's Vinson for all the people wondering. I live in Stockholm, Sweden. This is in August, it'll be 4 years. So going on my 4th year. I teach at Internationella Engelska Skolan. That's the International English School. A super stock name. So everybody's you teach in English school? Yeah. What's it called? The International English School. But I've been doing that for 4 years. And I play drums at Hillsong Sweden. And we've got 4 or 5 or 6 campuses now. But I'm usually in the city campus or the north campus most often. And what else? I've got a wife. I don't have any kids yet, and I'm currently looking for a rehearsal space. So if anybody in Stockholm's listening to this right now, let me know if you got a replokal that you need somebody to jump in. I'm down to get in there. So, yeah, but that's that.
For all my Stockholm listeners, maybe I'll get some Stockholm listeners for this.
Yeah.
For this podcast. But yeah, so you're heavily involved in the music scene, and you've done some really cool stuff with that. You've, you play for, pretty massive services as far as just everything that's involved in the, it's not a small church in the sense that, you've got in-ears and. Yeah. You're working on a track, right?
Right, exactly.
And that's stuff that I want to do more of, but I got a good taste of that whenever I moved to Murfreesboro, and now I'm back in Vicksburg.
Yeah.
But whenever I was in Murfreesboro for 2 years, I played at this large church called World Outreach, and we had in-ears, and we were rolling around these huge quasi-taiko drums, and that was really fun. So that was kind of my first experience with a big production with the track,
right?
Where we were all operating off in-ears and stuff. So, but yeah, and you have a website and a YouTube, and you're posting content there pretty regularly. And a lot of it's drum set, very, very nutritious information on drum set. And I've always been enamored by watching you play drum set. In fact, the intro to this podcast is a really old video of me and Mark, and I think you were playing a drum set in that. And it's where it's that boom, and we turn around and we drop our toboggans. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow,
so when you see whenever you see the full production, yeah. So everyone, this is the drummer in that video in my introduction to the podcast.
Oh, snap.
It's Vic McMurtery. So yeah. So what do you find? I guess what's your favorite part about teaching? I mean, you're teaching, like I said, in Sweden, and for reference, you're 7 hours ahead of me. So it's 10 o'clock. We started at 10 a.m. here, and we start at 5 p.m. over there.
Exactly.
So I asked if I scheduled a Zoom meeting for 10 in the U.S., and I was like, is that early, or is that early enough? Because, it seems like simple math, but I really had to I probably thought a little too hard about it. But I'm glad we're making this work. So
yeah, me too.
yeah, it's afternoon over there. But what are some of the things that you really enjoy about your job at the English school in Sweden?
I think for me, I guess not to go back too far, but when I first started at the English school, it was more, I guess moving to Sweden. I'm coming from I'm coming from the States, coming from Mississippi, where we're really heavy into like the marching band culture. You've got drum corps, you've got winter guard, where there's this like very saturated culture of like not only high quality music, but using it as a competitive aspect as well. And then moving to Sweden, it was almost like flipping a coin and being on the opposite side of the coin for the first time in my life, and being very, very confused as to how I would kind of use music to how I would kind of help them find the motivation without them already having this underlying competitiveness when it came to music. You know what I mean? Like so many students
Right.
in the U.S. or in the South specifically have. So it was going to teaching theory, piano, guitar, drum set. It's much more of a general, well-rounded musician is what we're making over here in Sweden. It's not so much like there aren't any orchestras, there aren't any ensembles in schools, so it's a very different vibe. But I think my favorite part about it is like finding, because the kids who enjoy music or who do music outside of school, it's not hard for them to come in and get a good experience out of the lesson and enjoy it and learn new things. But my favorite part about it is I think those kids who come in with this mindset of this is lame, I don't really want to do this, I'm just here because I have to do music because I have to get a grade and blah blah. It's my favorite part is when those kids find something that they like. When they sit at the drum set for the first time and they can finally figure out this groove that they've been trying to work on, or even just a basic groove, because they haven't had experiences trying to make different limbs do different things at the same time, or kids who don't know anything about music but they really like Avicii and they learn how to play Wake Me Up on the guitar. It's like those are my favorite moments. Very, very small. So in the day to day, it's very, very much so a grind. But when those little sparks happen, you're like, I like that.
Yeah.
So
that kind of like spark of inspiration.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's like we all, especially those of us that are doing this for a career,
right.
Those were not small moments for us, or maybe they were, but it was a collection of them, and there was a kind of a procession to where we're at now, and we still have those visceral experiences. Dr. Waymeyer, were you in his elementary methods class?
Yeah.
Did you have him for elementary methods?
Yeah.
And I think he did a great job of just talking about visceral experiences. I really didn't use the word visceral a lot until after his class and kind of understood that. So, and that's just like, for context, for me, I remember in 2008 going to a drum corps show at Southern Miss, and M.M. Roberts Stadium is made mostly out of concrete, and just acoustically is heaven for drum corps, because just hearing horn lines like Crown, drum lines like the Cadets, and just these different corps that just play with so much power. That stadium reverberates. But for me in 2008, it was Phantom Regiment when they did their Spartacus show, and I think a lot of people that I know in my network would agree that that was the show for me too. If you were a part of the 2008 Phantom Corps, you take pride, and hopefully you take pride in the fact that you went from town to town and gave tons of people that experience, and not to necessarily digress into drum corps right away. But you're doing that in a class level. And did you say that your class time takes more the shape of like not a general music class necessarily, but it's not like band. It's not an ensemble. You're teaching.
It's definitely more so mixing the theory and the application within the same period, if that makes sense. So I could take
that's awesome.
Yeah, it make more sense if I take like because it also differs from year to year, like the year 4 and the year 5. Sorry, when I say year 4 and year 5, I mean fifth grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, but they just say it differently over here. But anyway, so with these fourth grade and fifth grade classes, they're only an hour long. So the way you mix the theory and the application is very much. It has to be really succinct, and it has to be very much like this is this right here, and this is how you apply it. Whereas with the year 6 and up, because I teach 4, 5, 6, and 7, and then there's another one of my colleagues. His name's Peter Lowe. He teaches year 8 and year 9. But with those 6, 7, 8, 9 classes, they look a lot different because we have 90 minutes. So we can spend the first 10 minutes, reviewing something from last week. We can spend 15 or 20 minutes, introducing a new concept. Say we're talking about, I don't know, say we're learning this song, and we're talking about chords. So they're learning how to play, more or high level chords on piano with the right hand. And we might spend another 15 minutes introducing bass and how you play a bass line on a piano. And then they can spend 25 minutes practicing, and then you've got you just have these different chunks of like, here's a little bit of theory, go apply it in there, and it's a lot more room for them to just explore. Which I kind of like.
Yeah.
I do of course miss the ensemble experiences, but like I think also here there's just like that level of individuality that you don't necessarily get in an ensemble. And also teaching, there's only 16. I only have 6. Music isn't, well, at least at the school I teach at, in this company, the aesthetic subjects are all half classes. So I only have 16 kids in the room, which is a lot, which really gives me the freedom to see every single student, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So I feel like you have that time to go around and hear this kid and see what they need help with, and like listen to them or kind of see them develop over the year as a musician. I think that's really cool. But
the way it sounds is like this class is a really global thing. Like any of the students that decide to go further in this, that like I said, you give that visceral experience, they decide they want to keep doing this, whether or not it be like their career or something that they do as a hobby. Everything is way more accessible to them because they're learning the theory, but it's also an applications-based class. Exactly. And the other thing that I like is your approach is extremely diversified. You're talking about these truncated units of time that you have an hour to basically navigate.
Right.
How much time do you think average, and this is a question I'm asking on behalf of people that are about to go into their first teaching gig, and also just people that, teachers are kind of in a tough spot right now with everything that's going on.
Yeah.
But how much time do you spend, even before, speaking of social distancing and everything, how much time do you spend outside the classroom planning for this stuff? Because it's very organized.
My first 2 years, I spent a good deal of time like outside of class trying to figure out, because you especially when you, in my specific experience, having this sort of my entire music education is based around how ensembles work, or how a band should work in the U.S. and then moving here, not having that at all, but still trying to figure out, okay, how do I facilitate learning in this setting, using some of those same skills. But I think I spent quite a bit of time outside of work planning, trying to figure out, okay, I know what concepts I want to teach, but how can I figure out how to do this in like you said, how do I break down this theory into an abbreviated form where I can do this and apply it within the same lesson, because I'm also only seeing them once a week. I forgot to say that part. I'm seeing year 6 on Wednesday, and then I'm not going to see them again until next Wednesday. So so it's getting it. I spent a lot of time breaking it down into short chunks where they could digest that information, but also retain it, because I don't want them to come back next week and not remember any of that. You know what I mean? So not to get too detailed, but like, for example, with my year 4s, they're coming in, they're new to English, number one. they're new to our school, and I don't know at all what their music background is. And these are 10-year-olds, so they come in. The first lesson, we talk about tempo, steady beat, and rhythms. I teach them 5 rhythms: quarter note, eighth note, 16th note, quarter note rest, and half note. And I make all these crazy names for them so they remember them. We got ta, TT, ticka ticka, two, and a pause. So like that's all we do the first lesson. The next week we come in, I review those rhythms. We pull out the drum pads, and I have these little rhythm cards laminated. So I put them in groups of 4. I give each group 4 rhythm cards. I give them 30 seconds to read it. I give them another minute and a half to practice it, and then they have to present for the class. Next week we come in, they do a body percussion composition. So still talking about still drilling steady beat in those 5 rhythms, and in tempo, trying to figure out how to do that. And after about 3 or 4 weeks doing that, okay, I've established with them, okay, they know how to read rhythms. Now let me apply this to like a musical instrument. Boom. That week I teach them how to read the notes on the staff using this crazy story. You know what I mean? So it's like every week we're building on these simple concepts and trying to and that's in August. So and by the end of September they can play a song on piano, a very, very simple melody, but they can play a melody on piano. You know what I mean? So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, okay, how can I make this work? And Jack, if I'm being honest, man, I was really frustrated. Like I went in with these high expectations of like, okay, like if that's what they're doing in year 4, my year 6s should be able to, they should be playing bass on one hand, chords on the other hand, maybe mixing some melody in there. They should be able to play, I should be able to put them in bands on drum set, or one person on guitar, one person on drum set, one person singing. And I kept getting frustrated. I'm like, this is not working. I'm like, okay, look, you see them one time a week. You don't know what their music background is. Like, I had to adjust my expectations for what they can do, not necessarily what I could do as a 6th grader in the U.S. in band, going to band every day, right, having learned all these things in elementary school. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's very much like it was a culture shock in that way for me.
Yeah. And that's crazy that you say that. Like, you got there, you had expectations, and you kind of had to backtrack and adjust. And that's a necessary part of teaching. I know how excited I was whenever I graduated USM to go into my first teaching job. And it's impossible to not have expectations. Like, it's unhealthy to not have expectations. Exactly. Yeah. People always say, don't get your hopes up. But it's like, I would rather take an educator who's maybe like excited and misguided versus someone who's going into it with that mentality that we've both heard. And I feel like I hear it more with percussionists. It's like, well, I'm either getting like a percussion director position, or I'm not teaching horns and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's like, no. Like, not in Mississippi. Right. I know that's not like, they're not just like, oh, we're dying to have a percussion director. It's like, no, you got to stand in front of one of our middle school bands, exactly. Yeah. And you want to do a good job with that. Like, I enjoyed so much at Quitman being in front of the 8th grade band. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that it wasn't like easy by any means. I spent a lot of time backtracking and being like, oh man, I got to go work on this. Yeah. But I was listening to this podcast the other day, actually. It was Jocko Willink. He's like a ex-Navy SEAL. He like redesigned the Navy SEAL training programs and stuff. And he had a good point. He said, you can almost no decision is final. Like, not to get morbid, but like they were talking about like, I mean, yeah, if you like kill a person, that's final, But he said, like if you like make a plan and you go through with the plan doesn't work, the decision's not necessarily final. You can go back and make changes. He said, but one thing that you can't get back is time. Time goes by really fast. And once it's gone, it's gone. Like, I mean, I think about that whenever like mornings where I don't wake up early. Oh. I don't sleep till 3. Like I can't do that, but still, like if I wake up at like 10 some mornings, I'm just like, dang, like I missed the sunrise. And that beginning part of the day is just so productive to me because I feel more, this is going to sound like way out there and like way, I don't know, I guess it's going to sound like trippy, but maybe other people can identify with this and I won't sound crazy. When the world is like, my part of the world, the sun is rising, I'm like, all right, the animals are starting to wake up.
Right.
Like it's in me. Like I've internalized like nature, and it's like I want to wake up with nature because that's when the juices are flowing.
Yeah.
Everybody's juices are flowing.
Exactly.
If you're waking up at 7 or 6 or whatever, and like you feel like it's like, all right, let's go.
Let's get it,
My creative juices are flowing. Like this morning, I woke up, and it was originally just going to be a bathroom break, and then I like couldn't fall asleep because I was thinking about drum parts for this exercise I'm writing.
Okay.
I like tried to go back to sleep, and I was like, I got to go write this down, and that was like at 5:30, so it's like, I'm grateful for that to happen because had it not been, I would have woken up at 7, which is still kind of early, but it's like, it's like, hey, those mornings where I can't fall back asleep are good things because it's like
time to get up and go do it.
Yeah, that energy. But you talking about it, in your class and also just, your students not necessarily being where you originally expected them to be with year 6, you don't get that time back, but you do get to go back and reevaluate the expectations that you showed up with. And your students are better for that. They have, your iOS, your teaching iOS is updated. Like you install the update and boom, your next year 4 students get the new Slick Vic.
Exactly.
So
I'm using
it's
that
awesome.
iOS bit. I like that, bro. I like that.
What's that?
I'm using that iOS bit. I like that. I like that a lot.
Oh yeah. I do that when I'm teaching like drum lines. If we break down this one like 4 measure part, I'm like, all right, that part's got the update installed.
Let's go.
It's got to stay that way.
Let's go.
Can't go back.
Yeah.
But I think it's super awesome, and I really just wanted to cover that because I think that in terms of this podcast, there's going to be a lot of young music educators listening to this. I hope there is. And I think that we have to, one of our, especially now with everything that's going on, legislation's coming down the pipe, and I don't know how it is in Sweden. I have a feeling this is completely guesswork, that it's not as bad as it is here with the COVID because everything was a suggestion here on how to handle it. There was no definite things, especially, and I think we came out of the shutdown too early, and didn't really handle the shutdown responsibly. Yeah. And that I say we, like as a collective, like there's individuals that are like really advocating for the right things, but until we have like a unified or mostly unified approach. So all that being said, I digress. Teachers are about to have like 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out. We're virtual learning this week or this day, and we're in class the next. My county has decided to go to in-class teaching, but students have the option to learn virtually.
Okay.
And right now, there's no limit of how many times they can switch between virtual learning and in-class time. So we have to be ready to kind of roll with the punches. And I actually found this article. It was MIT Sloan, and they were talking about how businesses have made proactive changes to deal with COVID. Like some of them changed their product, some of them changed their platform. And I'm going to go into that in a different podcast, but I'm just thinking that's kind of what we have to do as teachers. I know a lot of teachers are scared right now to go back into school, but if we're doing it and we're not, quitting or going on strike, then we have to be proactive and figure out how we're going to handle that.
Exactly.
So I don't remember where exactly I was going with that, but for young educators and older educators that have been doing the same thing for 20 years very successfully. We're about to, as part of our job, and it's always been a part of our job, but even more important now than ever, is we've got to be able to make compromises with a changing environment, and we've also got to humble ourselves in a way when it comes to our expectations. And that's something that ever since I've known you, I feel like watching you in a classroom, you would constantly be conscious of, can this be better? You've always struck me as that person, and in working with you in our time at USM, it's the same thing. You've never struck me as somebody that's complacent, like this is the way it's worked, these are my expectations. So I think you're a great example of that.
Thank you.
And I like hearing this about, students on the other side of the globe right now are getting this experience with you. And I just think like so many students deserve that education experience. So, and I wish that there was a million of you. I wish there wasn't a teacher shortage. I wish we had like a million Slick Vicks to, Mr. McMurtry's to come be in our classroom. So that's super awesome.
Appreciate that, man.
I'm done talking about that. This is your time.
I feel
so
you.
We talked.
It needs to be talked about. So I appreciate you talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I just got on my soapbox for a little bit, but I just think a lot of you. So you don't just teach. You have one thing that we haven't talked about is you've recorded with some pretty awesome musicians.
Yeah.
One of them being Andy Narrell. The album, which album was it? It was his most recent one, right?
We Kind of Music, yeah.
We Kind of Music. So if you're not hip on that, go to iTunes or Spotify. Preferably iTunes, go buy it. But Vinson McMurtery is the drum set player and percussionist as well, correct?
I play most only drum set, yeah, just drum set.
Word. So just drum set. But he recorded drum set with Andy Narrell, who's a fantastic and legendary pan player and also just musician. Right. Like watching him on piano is just as mind blowing. It's his thought process. We played a lot of his compositions at Southern Miss, but on his most recent album, you're doing that. And I want to talk about that. I want to put a pin in that for just a second because I've got some questions about that whole origin story. But what other projects are you recording on? Like other gigs that you get? What do those look like?
Well, I mean, obviously right now with COVID, it's a little different. So there aren't any like gigs I've been getting lately. But there's a band I've been playing with here that actually we formed when I lived in Karlstad, was another smaller city west of Stockholm, close to the west coast. But that band's called Moodstone. We put out an EP a couple years ago, and then last year we worked on an album and we recorded the album, and we were kind of still waiting for the engineer to get us the final mix, final master tracks on that. So I won't like say when that's gonna be out because I really don't know. But yeah, the Andy Narrell album. I actually recorded an album with his wife, Anita, when I was there as well. So I played some drums on there. So that's out. I think you can find that in the same places, Spotify or iTunes, or preferably iTunes. Go buy it, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of gigs actually that I've gotten through church, like recording this. We did a really big production for Easter. And those we recorded that whole experience, and that's on YouTube as well. So if you go to Hillsong Sweden, you can check that out. It's called in Swedish, Good Friday is Långfredagen. So if you type, that's LA with the little O on the top of it, NGFREDAGEN.
Can we find that on your YouTube channel or your Instagram?
It's actually yeah. I mean, I did post about it on my Instagram, so you could probably find it through going there. But also if you just type Hillsong Sweden on YouTube, it's one of the first videos that pops up. It has quite a few views.
Hillsong Sweden.
Yeah. So
awesome.
But yeah, I mean, like I would say lately, like I haven't been gigging too much because COVID kind of messed all that up. But I've got quite a few like smaller gigs here and there, with like playing for this choir or playing for this recital or this private gig for this person or a private party for this person. But I've also like the gigging scene like in the actual city, like in Stockholm, isn't too big. So you kind of have to like know who to talk to and where to get in to do those kind of things. But recording wise is it's nice to get in and do some work there. But yeah, so not to, like, I guess to top that off, not a lot of gigging right now, but still a good deal of live stuff happening.
Yeah. When you go into a recording session, or actually this is a question, kind of a double question, because you said you mostly play at the Stockholm campus for Hillsong Sweden, but you do occasionally play at other like satellite campuses.
Right.
So when you go to those different churches, those different stages, I assume they all have gear there.
Oh yeah.
But also when you go record, there's certain gear that you kind of somewhat expect to be there. What would you say going into either a church of that size or a recording session? What's like your kit that you bring with you, like your must-haves? Like I'm sure you bring your own sticks that you prefer, maybe your own in-ears or headphones, but like what else do you bring just to like emergency, or it's not going to be there and you're going to have to supply it? That whole thought process.
For me, I mean, obviously, the essentials. You got to have, drum keys and sticks and stuff like that with you. But for me personally, I take my cymbals with me everywhere I go. Anywhere I'm gonna play, I'm taking my cymbals with me. That's mainly just because I feel like, people say it's not the wand, it's the wizard, which I wholeheartedly agree with. I spent most of my childhood showing up to, I'm from a full gospel Baptist church background, so spend most of my life showing up to churches with my granddad on a Sunday afternoon, and they're like, yeah, just bring some sticks, and you pop up and there's nothing there at all. So I definitely know how to work with little to nothing, but I do feel like there's something to be said for your sound is a little bit reliant upon, or at least added to by having your own equipment with you. So like just having my cymbals, I feel like it really helps me I really feel like I can play to, I can get I know how to get what I want to get out of my equipment, if that makes sense. And I feel like cymbals play a big role in that, especially when I'm playing in a church setting where I feel like, where there's, swells and stuff that play such a big role in how songs grow, in the sort of progression of especially when we talk about worship music. So I definitely take my cymbals with me everywhere I go. There have been gigs where I'll take my snare with me as well. Oh, sorry, not to shameless plug, but those were Mino cymbals, of course. Everybody's making great stuff these days, and that's hands down. I agree with that 100%. I played a lot of Istanbul, which is some of the most beautiful sounding cymbals I've ever heard. But just Minos are my cymbal of choice for the time being.
Yeah, for sure. They make great cymbals.
Yeah. But I also sometimes I take my snare with me. I have a couple different snares, but depending on the gig, if I'm playing like when I'm doing these private gigs, I usually take my my 14 by 5.5 Gretsch with me, just because I know it's a solid all around snare, and I can play to the room. Like if I'm doing a private party, I want that snare with me because I can get a tasteful sound at low dynamics with that snare. Whereas if I pop up and it's they've got a 14 by 7 pork pie that's like cherry babinga, it's like, okay, I mean I can crack that, but if this is a private party, I don't want to be playing blast beats, in a room.
Open this pit up, let's go. Yeah.
I don't want to be opening up and in a room of 15 people. Like, yeah. Sorry about that, guys. No, but yeah, it's definitely probably cymbals and maybe a snare. But I try not to travel too heavy because city life, man. I got to take the metro everywhere I go, so I don't want to be too bogged down.
Yeah, that's something that I don't think that would be a total culture shock for pretty much anyone in Mississippi.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you have the Amtrak you can take to New Orleans and all that, but I just think the lifestyle of taking a train to most places and not driving a car. I personally am the type of person. I think you drove as well whenever we went to go see Snarky Puppy in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And I just remember at that time, and a little less now, but it used to be very impulsive that anytime we went somewhere, I had to drive. I was I don't want to ride in someone else's car.
Exactly.
I don't want to I don't want to be as I don't want to sit in the back seat. I want to be in the driver's seat. I want to have full say of the car.
Exactly.
And things have mostly changed since then. But I can't imagine. I guess a train might be a little different because everyone's a passenger except the person. It moves real fast. Just more of that's the lifestyle.
Right.
And I guess that peer pressure, strength in numbers, falling in would be, I could get used to it. But I know that for most people here, where it takes you, 6 hours to get to the other end of the state.
Right.
People like their cars, people like their trucks.
Most definitely.
So, and I think that, but still, I think what you're saying, I think you gave a great answer about, snare, cymbals, sticks, just, being prepared for that. And I agree with you. You said something about the wand and the wizard. Yeah, but like cymbals are important.
Exactly.
Like, I'm still not completely set up with my cymbal collection. Like I've got that Horatio Hernandez. I've got one of his Istanbul rides that he sold whenever he came to USM.
Yeah.
And I've got this nice hand hammer crash, a Sabian hand hammer crash, and just a set of pretty stock hi-hats, and I want to broaden my cymbals. But even then, going anywhere, like, I mean, you played for show choirs when you were here in Mississippi.
Exactly.
That's another big thing. And like anytime they're like, oh, like anytime the director was like, yeah, they got a drum set there, I was like, nah, nope. Like I'm at least bringing my cymbals, but yeah, it was anytime they were like, don't even worry about bringing anything. I mean, they got it all there, It's like, nah, no thanks. I'll set it up,
Exactly.
But yeah. So how do you find balance in what you do? And that goes with obviously your multiple hats you wear as a teacher, a performer. I'm sure you've done some music directing if you're in charge of tracks or any of that. Yeah. But and also just finding time for yourself, for your own your sanity and your mental health and your emotional health, and like especially now being kind of, I think everyone's kind of shut in, and I know band directors are feeling like everything's about to go crashing, and I don't think that's the case. But how do you find balance in normal times and during these times?
Well, I think for me, it's like, I've always, if you ask Johanna, she'll tell you it's clinical, but I've always been a bit OCD about things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where that's helped me the most is like how I plan things. So like, I think for me, my balance comes from planning. And I think now in a time where you don't really know, I think that's kind of the thing that, that bothers people the most about this whole COVID thing, is that nobody knows what's coming next. And that's why you don't really know what to plan for anymore. So I think, for me, is finding that balance is just controlling what I can control, to put it that way. I know that, I know how work is going to be. I know how to plan for that. I know that if I spend too much time in this setting, I'm going to lose time in this setting. So really for me, it's just, setting out, controlling what I can control, plan what I know is going to take place, and follow that plan. And then when things pop up unexpected, or when things aren't going the way they need to be going, then, I got to roll with the punches and just realize that, everything happens for a reason, not to get like super cliche. Whatever people, believe in what you believe in. But like for me, like my planning and my faith in God are the two things that kind of keep me grounded and keep me balanced. But when I think, when the COVID stuff came, with school, and we kind of were all over the place a little bit, kind of like you were talking about earlier, with doing the virtual learning one week and then kind of back in school or whatever. It was very much like, and you also get in this situation where you don't know who to blame. You're like, oh, is it the higher ups? Is it the government's fault that decisions aren't being made? Yeah. Is it the school's fault? Is it the school district? Yada, yada, yada. And it's like, it's very easy, and you got voices around you in the staff room or wherever else, chirping this and chirping that. It's very easy to like fall into that rut. And I feel like as soon as you fall into that, every other things in your life won't be as balanced. You're gonna be ticked off about that or upset about that. You're gonna come home, that's gonna seep into your personal life. You're gonna be ticked at your significant other because things at work aren't going well. It's just like, what? I just gotta control what I control. What I can control. Put everything else in God's hands. And I think when it comes to more of the performing and the aspect of like doing things outside of my job, because and on the one hand, like, my job is secure because that's my visa. That's how I'm here in the country. But then when it comes to the performance side, with the recording and trying to gig and trying to network, it's almost like, okay, I'm an immigrant. I moved here and I don't have the connection that I had before I moved. And that's something I used to talk to Johanna quite a lot. My first year was just, like I left the literal gold mine. Like I went to school with beasts. Like they're out doing their thing. I was taught by a man who's world renowned. He's doing his thing. He's got, and there's no telling who he could have put me in contact with or who I could have, been in contact with just by being in the place where I was flourishing. You know what I mean? And I kind of just up and left and moved halfway across the world where I don't know anybody. And I'm in a position where now I don't. Exactly. And I'm in a position now where I don't know the network. I have to sort of find where it is. I need to navigate myself. I need to navigate that while also trying to navigate a personal life outside of that. Like, where's where's north? You know what I'm saying? And I think it's just it's just taking it one day at a time, because that perfectionist comes out in me, and I'm like, man, I haven't posted a video on Instagram in 4 months or in 4 weeks, and I haven't played a gig since last September, and I haven't done this or done that, and it's like, take it one step at a time, man. Like, this too shall pass. Like I'll find this one person, and that'll I'll play this one gig. You never know where that's gonna take you. So I think for me, it's just keeping your eyes up, and not getting down on what you haven't done, but sort of kind of leaning on what you have done and using that as motivation to keep going. Yeah. And I'm really preaching to myself right now, just because, like, I'm thinking about, my own. I had, like, when not to get too, like, personal or whatever, but we actually moved into this new this apartment in February. And I gave up my rehearsal space, or like where I had my drums, and where I was recording most of my videos, and doing most of my YouTube lessons and stuff, because we needed to save a little bit of money. And now I'm in a position where I've been out of rehearsal space since February. My drums are right now. My drums are downstairs in the basement. Like, so I'm only playing in church. You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to find that, and now it's COVID. So I'm like torn, because I don't even want to go ask somebody for rehearsal space right now. I don't know how clean it is. I don't know these people. You know what I'm saying? You also got that kind of playing with your head as well. But it's like, stay positive. Something will come up. Let this die down a bit, and then see what happens next. But yeah, I don't know. I hope that answered your question. But
it definitely did.
What happened. Yeah.
It kind of just reminds me of some things I've been reading, just from different philosophers or whatever, just different philosophies I've heard. But you did mention your faith, and there's I've found a lot of meaning in just kind of I'm blessed that I have a diverse friend group, and I think you could probably say the same. It's just we have, even with our mutual friends, there's a lot of diversity, but then also with friends that we have that aren't mutual. It's just it's always interesting seeing everyone's beliefs, and I think that it's kind of taboo to some people to talk about it. And it's like, if I'm at the family table or whatever, maybe I won't bring up politics, but I think if you observe it in a way that's just appreciating the diversity, you learn a lot. And one thing that I've noticed is like with the Bible and everything, a lot of looking at the context in which it was written before we had all this technology that just spoiled us, and in a way, I don't want to say ruined, but kind of like numbed us to certain things. Like, people had to find reason. People had to like make reason. And they, one thing that's been consistent is that happiness is fleeting in a way. I think sometimes we find happiness that lasts forever, and it's like depressing when we don't have happiness all the time. And I think that struggle and suffering is part of life, and that our generation and generations beneath us, or younger than us, we haven't really, I mean, we lived through 9/11.
Right.
But there's other struggles like world wars where we were not the best equipped country at the time, and we figured it out. And I mean, it's just, you think about people that served and people that have been through other struggles that have put us in this great position to be in, as far as just the technology we have and all that. But there's always been suffering, and it's not about necessarily finding happiness. It's about finding meaning.
Exactly.
Meaning is not fleeting. Happiness, it's great when you have it, but as long as you understand that, like, meaning is long term, and that's what you have every day. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is that finding meaning means what you said about, like, you know what you can control, and you work on what you can control, and you leave the rest to God. Right. If you were to say that same thing in a perhaps more secular way would be
Right.
you focus on your circle of influence, like the 7 Habits, Covey's book. He talks about the circle of influence, and I don't remember what the outer circle is, but it's much bigger, the things you can't control. And that's so hard to do because you were talking about news and social media, and everyone's got to say about this COVID and this and politics and everything. And not only everyone talks about, well, I'm not getting on Facebook and I'm not watching the news. That's great, but you have to know how to navigate with people who are taking their cues from the news, and it might not be the news source that you identify with. But that's why I think like it's kind of like it's futile to make talking about those things taboo. I think that it can be unhealthy and you can have arguments instead of healthy debates a lot of times, but I think getting out of our comfort zone and just exploring the diversity and just being grateful for it is better, because you're able to kind of just exist and know that you're not ever going to have identical opinions with anyone. And for some reason that just rubs people the wrong way. But being selective about what you hear on the news is a very, I think, mature thing. But I think that it's often an oversight when we don't realize that we have to navigate in a society, in a group of friends, whether they be diverse or not, that still takes their cues from a variety of sources. So I don't want to, again, you compel me to get on my soapbox sometimes.
Hey, that was me. Sorry.
But no, don't apologize. What you're saying is just, it reverberated with me. So that's how I feel. Like you're seeing this in real time, and you're on a completely different side of the earth right now. We were raised in the same college, but just you've got influences before we met, and now you're somewhere completely different after we've become great friends. And it's just cool to hear that, So one thing you said was like establishing a network, and that's something that moving even to Nashville, to Murfreesboro, and now moving away from it, I don't see myself not being back in Nashville. My girlfriend's from Nashville. She's going to school in Kentucky right now for her master's. But as far as when I moved to Nashville, that was the first time I think that it registered that like, oh yeah, one, I have to know how to use an interface like a DAW. And I have to know how to network with people that, like, because Nashville's moving, and even Murfreesboro, there's connections. I mean, they all end up in Nashville, but it's moving, and you have to get in, you have to jump in, and just kind of make connections. You have to go to shows, and I made a lot of great friends and connections up there. But how are you navigating that in a completely different country, like you said, and you also have the challenge of people might not speak English, How are you setting up a network in a new place?
Well, I think I think I would kind of split it into, I have I have two networks. So I have this network of educators and friends that are, or they kind of merge back into the same network. But I would say from the beginning, I kind of have two separate networks. I have this network that I've built through the English school, where I'm meeting people from all walks of life, from all different countries, from South Africa, from Canada, from Germany, all, like, literally tons of countries, and they're coming from different backgrounds, different walks of life, and they all have the same. We all sort of share this passion of teaching, of raising up the next generation of knowledge. And that helps me, to break it down even more, that helps me, when I'm looking for resources, when I'm looking for different angles of teaching, when I'm looking for different ways to manage behavior, when I'm looking for, all these things that help me in my job. And then I have this other network that I'm so blessed to have, like through Hillsong, where it's like there's lots of Swedish people, but then there's also this multicultural, diverse sort of situation where everybody's coming here as well. And the amount of creative people, man, Jack, the amount of creative people I've met just in church, like, this guitarist or this producer or this singer or this vocal coach or this guy who works with video. It's just like, man, like I'm literally surrounded by goats in all their areas of life, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's awesome to be able to network with them and to get to know them on a personal level, knowing that we share that we share the same faith, but also that we share like the same hobbies and musical interests. So like, I using that to sort of like chip away at trying to get into the music scene from those different angles. You know what I mean? I've got a good friend, Philip Erickson, who is like one of the nastiest guitar players I've ever heard. And he's playing at different universities with other friends of his that are leaving the King's Music School here in Stockholm, like the Institute of Music, or people who have gone to this other music school, but they're on the rise in Sweden, or they're going to go tour with this guy, or blah blah blah. One of my friends, actually one of my good friends, Abraham, who also plays drums in church with me, but he's a photographer by trade. He is good friends with Zara Larsson's drummer, and it's just like boom. It's like all these networks, like all these weird, all these connections where I would never have dreamed of having, like of building this sort of connection, had I not taken that leap. So I think,
and you're not that many degrees separated.
Exactly. Yeah, it's that part is crazy. So I'm hoping that obviously depending on COVID, but like once those things are over, once this is over, that like I can also use those avenues to kind of try to get in as an up and coming musician, but also and obviously when you throw in social media, that opens up the floodgates as well, just because it's like you meet people, you never know who's seeing you on there, so that's also really 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 cool. But yeah, and also I'm doing the same kind of things. I've gone to more shows since I moved to Stockholm than I've been to in my entire life, just because like if you think when big artists are touring, Stockholm is going to be one of the cities they stop in on a world tour. So it's been really cool to see. I saw Robert Glasper twice since I've been here. I actually got to go the first time I saw Robert Glasper. I stuck around after the show, and I met the bass player. Found out he was from like Texas. He was like, "Yeah, man, we're actually playing in Copenhagen tomorrow. Just we happen to be leaving the next day to go to Copenhagen."
Yeah.
And I was like, "We're gonna be in Copenhagen tomorrow." He's like, "Y'all want to come to the show?" And we were like, yeah. So he's like, "I'll put you on the list."
Nice.
We show up to the show. We get in for free. We get to go backstage after the show. I get to meet Robert Glasper. It's
That's
super dope.
so awesome.
Like, and I mean, I've seen Corey Henry and the Funk Apostles a couple times since they've been here, and every time like me and Tayron have got to chatting, and like he actually remembered me, and like we keep in touch on on like social media and stuff. So it's just like. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. It's not impossible to get out here and meet people and see what that does. So it's
that's
awesome.
Yeah, well, and that for me going to Nashville, that was just it was like, I mean, I remember going to New York City whenever I was in high school to march in the Macy's Great American Marching Band, and that was like, whoa, there's you think about the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade,
exactly.
And it didn't hit me because we didn't really like go to the city that much,
right?
But it didn't hit me until I saw a huge inflatable Pikachu, and then I was like, all right, this is
I'm
real.
Here.
For Nashville it was kind of the same thing. Like it was like you're in Murfreesboro, you're in grad school. I was overwhelmed with just the demands of grad school at the time, in a way. And then, you go to Nashville and you see these shows and it's just these nasty bands. And, there's just so many there's such a diverse music scene in Nashville. And I'm sure it's that way in Stockholm too. It's like, just so many genres being represented out there.
Right.
And I think you remember when Jonathan Scales came to USM, right?
Yeah.
And he had Jay White and Mason on drums.
Right.
They came to Nashville, and they played a show with Dynamo, which our friend Adam McPhail and Joshua Reynolds are two Hattiesburg natives, and they play in that group, and it was a phenomenal show. There was another group. I hate that I'm not gonna remember their name right now. It was it was like aqueducts or something like that, but they were ducks something, but they opened up. And if I remember, I'll mention it later because they were phenomenal. But Dynamo, it was this huge, it was like a suicide awareness charity or something. So it was like a great cause, but there were just so many good bands. And I digress. But Jonathan Scales' group was there, and I got to go backstage and actually chat with Elon for a second, the bass player, which was really cool. But when it hit me, I was with my friend John Ortiz, and he plays bass as well. I mean, he's like a percussionist who plays bass and accordion and all this stuff. He's just diverse talent. Yeah. But Jonathan Scales is up there, and he says, we've got our bass player Elon here, but after us is Ghost Note. And with them is another guy who's played bass with us, Mono Neon. And also, we're going to bring up Victor Wooten. So Victor Wooten, Mono Neon, and Elon all come up and play with Jonathan Scales, and it is this shred fest, and it was so good, and it was just nasty, and it was another one of those visceral experiences like we talked about. It's just like, what? This is too much for one room, and it was a big venue, and it was just like, oh man, like it was like I could feel my face get hot. It was just like unbelievable. It was just, I could not believe it. So it's that same like, it's a blessing to have those moments, Yes. It's like, and it feels, just talking with you about it and seeing your expression, it's like that feeling comes back, it's exactly. Like when you have those shared experiences, like, you're talking about going backstage with Robert Glasper and like getting to see Corey Henry and stuff. It's just, man, there's groups that do that, and it's not always the same genre of music for everyone. But it's amazing, like getting to work into those connections. So that's super awesome. And Adam McPhail is actually the reason I got to go backstage, and I met Elon, so shout out to Adam.
Shout out to Adam.
But I still chat with him and Joshua Reynolds, and I got to know a lot of the members of Dynamo while I was up there. Also, when I was in Nashville, I was doing a lot of salsa things, which really started with just being associated with Lalo, but then and it started with me just playing rehearsals, because the music director was the guy who usually played congas, named Yamil Conga, and he was the one who played congas in his band, but he wanted to direct music out front of the band. So he was like, Lalo, do you have any students that'll come just play tumbao for me? So I did, and the first rehearsal was just so long. It was like 4 hours. There was a lot of logistic things that wear it out, so my hands by the end were just dum, 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 dum. But man, after 4 hours of playing, like, my sounds haven't been the same since. They've been just way better. So those times, and it's like I got paid gas money, and but it's all you need, right? It's exactly. Like, it was such a good rehearsal, and I was actually, my friend's the one who called me about it, Johnny. He just needed someone that could do it. And then after that, I did it a couple more times, and then started going to this Rudy's Jazz Room, which is a very small jazz club, and watching guy Manuel Manotas Ramirez and him and Giovanni Rodriguez. Yeah, no, I've learned so much from these salsero, these salseros that are in Nashville, and it's a growing. I mean, it's already lit. The salsa scene, but it's growing. There's a place called Plaza Mariachi, and it's almost like a mall, but what it really is like these vendors that are Latin American, and they've set up business that is like authentic foods. There's a bar in there, and they play salsa music, and it's just, and not just salsa music, like they've had mariachi bands up there, bomba, so much diverse South American, Central American, even Caribbean music. And it's just super cool, and I just think it's something to be celebrated for sure.
Most definitely.
So I like I said, how big, what city would you compare Stockholm to here or can you? Is it just like so different that it's like
Stockholm is weird
unfathomable?
because it's big, but it's spread out. It's like because I mean Stockholm is actually a collection of islands, so
Oh, okay.
I don't even know if I can really compare it to another. I don't even know if I can really compare it to another like another city. I mean it's big, but it doesn't feel that big. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I mean, well, if you ask a Swede, they'll tell you like or if you ask somebody from Stockholm, they'll be like, yeah, Stockholm's not that big because they've been to they wouldn't say it's as big as New York or LA or anything like that. I mean, it's still the
Right.
capital of the country, so it's a major metropolitan area, but it's not
Yeah.
as condensed because it is kind of spread out. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just that, like I said, it's completely different culture over there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot about your bio, but you moved. We talked a little bit about your move to Sweden. You married Jocelyn. I was at that wedding. It was an awesome wedding. And what is Jocelyn teaches as well, right?
Yeah,
Your wife,
Johanna.
Jocelyn.
Johanna.
What's that?
Johanna.
Johanna. Oh gosh,
It's all good.
I totally messed that up.
No, you're good, bro.
Who do
Yeah,
I know
but
that's
yeah,
named Jocelyn? I apologize, Johanna.
No, it's all good. No, but we both teaching in the same company, but at different schools. Yeah, but we both do the.
Awesome.
Mhm.
That's great. I feel like I need to edit that out and put Johanna. I know that. That's the stupidest thing I'm gonna have said this week. Is not saying, and I said it multiple times too.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna have to put an air horn sound effect
Okay.
over every time I didn't say that. Just beep, beep. Yeah. Oh man. Well, I hope she's doing well.
Yeah.
Shout out to Johanna.
Shout out to Johanna.
Yeah. So, but you've got family there, in Sweden, and you've also got family here in
Right.
Mississippi. They are still Madison area.
Yeah. Everybody's still in the same spot. My brother's down in Hattiesburg. My sister
Yeah.
was down there as well because she was actually going to school in the USM, but COVID, so she's back home as well.
Right.
So yeah, everybody's still in the Madison area.
Awesome. Well, that's good to hear. I guess we've been going a little over an hour. But I guess the last thing I want to talk about, because I feel like this is just, I've learned so much from listening to other podcasts or audiobooks or reading books and found other resources.
Yeah.
Been led to other resources. What, do you have YouTube channels or a podcast or audiobooks or books that you've been listening to or watching or reading that you would recommend for other people, whether it be young educators, young musicians?
There's I guess I'll start with there's a podcast that I actually kind of stopped listening to, but I remember the first season being very much so it was very impactful for me, being somebody who was just kind of getting started with social media at the time and was trying to figure out, okay, how do I navigate if I want to start a music page, how do I kind of do this the right way, and yada yada yada. And it's called Made for Profit, and it's actually about it's actually two carpenters, so they talk quite a lot about woodwork and they give a lot of woodworking resources and whatnot because they're big into that. But the content that they talk about was very very helpful for me getting started up, and they get into the nitty gritty as well. They have one episode that's purely dedicated to personal Instagram versus business Instagram and what are the pros and cons and stuff like that. So it was very helpful. So if you into that, if you have a music page or you're trying to start one and you're trying to look at should I do this, should I do that, I would definitely recommend Made for Profit. There's let's see, books. I know this might be kind of cheesy because I think you have a copy of it as well. But do you remember Working Towards Excellence? You remember that book?
Yeah. Who wrote that one? It's a percussion professor, right?
Yeah, I can't remember who. It's orange. I still remember it. I read it multiple. I always end up reading it on the plane.
I feel like I could go in this room and pull it out,
exactly.
but it's in a box somewhere. Dr. Wooten made us read it.
Exactly.
Dr. John Wooten at University of Southern Mississippi. He
Shout out to Doc.
got a ton of copies and made us read it.
Exactly. But that's a good one. Sometimes I kind of like reading stuff like that, kind of get your motivation, get your back in the right spot. So definitely that as well. Ooh, man. Oh, fun stuff as well. I don't know. When it comes to
entertaining stuff too.
I always think of Mike Johnston. I just really like his YouTube channel is very, very well done. His website is very well done, but also the stuff that he posts to YouTube is just like it gives you that little like tidbit of information of like, okay, that's how he does, his website. And I also like he's just a big inspiration of mine in general. I love the way he plays. I love that he's comfortable in himself. He's not trying to be like anybody else, but also the way that he delivers content is like I think is spot on. You can watch a 5 or 6 minute video of his. And he's straight up. He's like, you're not gonna be able to do this the way I'm doing it after watching this video, but that's what practice is for. You know what I mean? And like I like that he staples every video with that comment, and like just the way he delivers the content. It's like it captures me, and it makes me want to go pick up my drumsticks and be like, all right, I'm gonna go practice. I'm not there yet. You know what I mean? So I like his stuff. Adam, the Orlando drummer, he's also really good. People just thinking about people I follow on Instagram. I like his content as well.
Yeah. Mike Johnston.
Yeah.
You said he brought him to mind. He's like that perfect trifecta. And he would disagree with the word perfect, so I won't use perfect. But that's my point exactly.
Exactly.
Is that he's that trifecta of the educator that I think people should strive to be. He's educational in terms of his delivery of the content knowledge. He is a killer performer. Watching him play, he can play.
Yeah.
And he's got that content knowledge. But the third thing of that three-legged stool is that he's inspirational. Like he's, and not just by saying a bunch of colloquialisms or cliches, but just by the way he conducts himself. Like he models a behavior that makes me want to, like you said, like he's a huge inspiration. You want to be like him. You want to have that same energy and happiness that he radiates,
Exactly.
So it's you saying that. It's like, Mike Johnston's such a good example of that trifecta.
Most that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that might be. Yeah, I think it was pretty good resources. As far as what I'm listening to, right? What I'm looking at and checking out right now.
Yeah, I asked that, and that wouldn't have been something had I started this podcast maybe a year ago, 2 years ago that I would have asked. But I found myself, it was really hard to get down to Hattiesburg and visit like my folks and like my friends like Chase and Mark Elsenson and all those guys. It was really hard to get down there and see them because I was 7 hours away.
Exactly.
And it was, I would chat with them occasionally, but I couldn't see my folks as much. But when I did get to, it was a long drive.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? Like, instead of just listening to my liked songs on Spotify over and over and over and over, I'm gonna like try something new. I was like, I'm gonna try. I think it was Scribd I got first. Yeah. But now I've got Audible, and I just been listening to audiobooks. I actually started with podcasts, and then I got Audible. So I was able to find podcasts that I just super enjoyed, and. I guess his podcast is controversial in some ways, but Joe Rogan, like, it's like he just has so many diverse guests on that are like, just super all over the spectrum politically and like topic wise. So I just enjoy watching him if just like the way he sets up in the format of his podcast I really like. But I just started listening to the Jocko podcast, and that's that guy I said that redid the whole but he's got an excellent book on leadership. Well, he's got several, but one is called Extreme Ownership, and it's just about being accountable for everything. Like as soon as you don't, basically, as soon as you, it sounds negative, but it's really not. But as soon as you don't blame yourself for things you're unhappy about, you give that power away. You make yourself powerless. And that's in a nutshell. It's more complex and more deep than that, but it's called extreme ownership. And he uses examples of like his time in battle in Ramadi, Iraq, where he was leading troops. And it's essentially a book about leadership. But he's got another one called The Dichotomy of Leadership, and it's about balancing leadership, like not micromanaging, but not being so hands off that your subordinates, as he calls them, are clueless and kind of like lack direction. So those are two, and then it's honestly been a lot of self-improvement literature that comes from military veterans. Believe it or not, that's just been what I've been listening to lately. And then another one was David Goggins. Yeah. If you haven't heard of him, you should check him out. He's a freak. Okay. He went through BUD/S like 3 times, which is like the SEAL school. Okay. I think I'm probably butchering that, and people who actually know what they're talking about would disagree. But anyways, their version of basic training, which is not basic, it's like ruthless. And but he went through it 3 times and finally got through it. But it's like basically his against all odds story, and he's just such a compelling figure, and it's super vulgar, or not vulgar, but it's very like raw. He doesn't hesitate to use profanity to like to get talk across his passionately. Yeah, but I mean, and he's always been that way. But he's like, like you gotta get. I'm not gonna use it right now, but he's like, you gotta get off your butt, and like it's just like, I mean, it's just like it makes you feel like, all right, yeah, okay. Like I do need to do something about this, But yeah, and it's just so that and like podcasts. Sometimes listen to like comedy podcasts as well. But yeah, I was just wondering because like I've been on Audible lately, and that's just kind of been what I'm trying to listen to is like mainly self-improvement literature, but not just for the sake of like, like, I mean, like Covey's 7 Habits is obviously a staple, and it's where a lot of those stem from. I think a lot of people put kind of empty self-improvement books out there, but I feel like the self-improvement genre gets that rap anyways, because people reach out for help in these books, and sometimes they don't get it. Right. But truth be told, there's bad books in any genre. Exactly. So those are some of the better ones that I've read. But just trying to find new content every day. And I think that's one thing. Maybe it's the educator side of me where it's like I don't feel like I have it all figured out. Exactly. Yeah. And like I said earlier, you seem like someone who, if I were to ever be a fly on the wall, or just like observe you're in class and you're out of class, the way you conduct, that seems like something that you would say the same thing. Like you've never struck me as somebody that's complacent. So I mean, I just think that's an important part of what we do as musicians and as teachers, and as teachers of musicians, and maybe indirectly as a teacher of music educators. Hey, there you go. Like, I hope that this podcast resonates with people who are about to go into teaching music, as well as musicians themselves. So I don't know. I just think that genre of book is something that I do. So something that I value a lot. Right. So I have thoroughly enjoyed this time visiting with you. And I think that we should do this again. I think that we should have a whole nother. I've got some ideas for the podcast. They vary a lot. Sweet. But this is just, this is step 1, is just getting this broadcasted out there. But I'll go ahead and tell you some of my other ideas involve like trying different foods. Let's go. I've got some other ideas for sampling some different lagers and trying it like a round table discussion. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah. But it's all going to be music related, True. I think that you're a great first guest because you've got so many hats that you wear. But I plan on not just it's the JHB Percussion Podcast, but in essence, I just want to bring in people that just want to talk about anything.
Exactly.
And I want it to essentially be through the lens of somebody that is musicking, whether it be playing, performing music professionally, or as a hobby, or they're teaching it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a percussionist. It doesn't have to be, it could be a vocalist. It could be a guitar player, somebody that's got real world experience that I think I've either talked to or want to talk to, because I think they have such an interesting take. And I think you're a great example of that. So, I think there's so many podcasts out there that are talking about percussion and curriculum and all that. And I do want to have those podcasts. I think what we just talked about was kind of curriculum in its own way. It's, you're talking about what teachers need to keep in mind whenever they're going into this new situation, but also just the general situation of, managing your time in a classroom, being organized. So I think this was just a super awesome podcast, probably super nutritious for the listeners, especially the times when I wasn't talking and you were talking. I think that you're just super insightful. So we'll do this again for sure. So really quickly, before we go, tell the audience, the listeners, every way that they can follow you and support you and find you on YouTube, Instagram, and all that.
Awesome. Okay, we start with you can reach me. I'm kidding. I was gonna say my phone number, but don't do that. I don't want you to get international. I don't want you to get any international charges. But no, my Instagram is VM Drums. That's for the music. Or if you want to follow me personally, just, in my everyday, not so drummy life, it's McMurtery, but it's spelled phonetically. So that's MICKMURTREE. That's not how you spell my last name, but it is how you say it. So you can follow me there. Everything I'm doing drum wise on Facebook, it's Vinson McMurtery Drums. Same handle for YouTube as well, Vinson McMurtery Drums. And my website as well is vincentmcmurtryDrums.com. So yeah, that's how you keep in touch with me musically. It's gonna be dope. Keep follow me. I'm gonna be doing great things hopefully. And if I'm not, then just know that I'm going to be trying to do great things. So
yeah, and that's he's got content on YouTube right now that I've watched, and I can vouch. It's just super educational and super musically nutritious information. So. And in general, this guy is a inspiring and spiritually nutritious human being. So, I'm blessed to call you a friend and more importantly, family for sure.
Brother, let's go.
Check out. Can you see? Well, you can't see it, but check it out. I've got our USM photo right there.
That's dope.
That's Vic right there.
I need that. That is awesome.
Yeah, that was when we all had those black number one
the fingers.
Hands on the end of our stick. Yeah, yeah.
Hey, believe it or not, I still have that little foam finger, bro. It's actually on my bookshelf in the living room.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
So many people's index finger, it got ripped off. It just didn't stay on or something.
Exactly.
So many people just had fists. Yeah. But yeah, super awesome. Thank you, Vic.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
We'll do this again for sure. It's just there's so much more we can talk about. We could just have a whole podcast on our college days.
Hey.
So, like I said, blessed to have you on the podcast, and let's do it again.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you having me.
That concludes this podcast. I hope to have out more in the future with some awesome guests. I've got some great plans in mind. Appreciate you listening and taking the time out of your weekend to give this a listen. We'll see you next time.